Hi, loves. Each cohort I have elected to create and to bring in a theme for that cohort that really embodies the collective frequency of that cohort and what they are moving through and the energetic that they are collectively coming together to shift and to move as far as really bringing a focus to a purpose that's greater than themselves. And these themes that I bring and that come through the energetics of the Institute are really around larger themes that run a current in our collective humanity and that run a current around sexuality and how sexuality and the integration of Eros into society and the integration of sexuality development, literacy in your sexual energy, how these specific themes really provide cornerstones and frequencies for change in humanity. These are topics and these are keys essentially that are really crucial in for those who are stepping in to be sexuality leaders to embody as we step into recognizing that a large part of the shift in humanity that we are looking for right now rests in understanding, integrating, moving with, becoming literate in sexual frequency, sexual energy, and sexuality development. That said, last year's, or this year's, it's happening right now, cohort was the threshold. And in that concept, I illuminated, or the Institute, what we kind of co-created was this concept of stepping across and the purpose of the threshold and the sacredness of the threshold of stepping into studying sacred sexuality. And without further ado, I'm going to bring to you right now what the theme for the 2026 cohort is for the Institute New Paradigm Intimacy. And this came to me on the land out in Colorado as I was walking, and I was really feeling into a lot of my own personal journey, which I know is tied to the collective, has been around navigating relationships and navigating this current that really pulls me, and I know pulls others, that is sometimes not so clean. It's sometimes, most often, it involves pain. It involves heartbreak. It involves learning how to traverse in hell of our wounds, in the hell of our trauma. And this is what I'm speaking to, and what came to me while I was on the land was the concept and the understanding of Eros unpolished. And Eros has been brought to us and presented to us as a glamour, as this really enticing and alluring, which it is. Eros is alluring entity that is seen as a pulse, as a vitality, as a life force, and it is also presented often in spiritual communities as like this thing that once we grab, then we will be there. And there's a large part of Eros that is not discussed and not spoken about, and I see that as the really the underworld of Eros, so to speak. And that is the Eros that is not polished. It is unpolished. It is not glamorous. It is dirt in your nails. It is blood in your teeth. It is laying on the ground. It is learning how to navigate hell through the wounds. And this is based upon the understanding and the piece that I share, and I know others share this as well, that our trauma and our wounds move through Eros and they vibrate, and Eros leads us exactly with that wound vibrating in its frequency, leads us to the person, to the event, to the experience that we are meant to synthesize with in order to face and to meet that wound in love. And a lot of this looks like what I see unfolding in the spirituality community of avoiding trauma bonds. where in fact, instead of avoiding trauma bonds, the invitation is actually to recognize that you are in the trauma bond and learn how to navigate that hell with the other person, if not with the other person, with yourself, which is usually what happens, where you learn how to navigate that trauma bond and what's happening within yourself, instead of just, this isn't, a red flag, I'm walking away. Because our Eros is undeniably laced with a wisdom that leads us specifically, that leads us directly to the person, to the point, to the event that we need to meet in order to synthesize our Eros. And this Eros does not look pretty. This Eros is an Eros that quite often we would rather avoid. And so that is the theme of this next cohort, is unpolished. And we are specifically looking at the unpolished Eros that is begging and asking to be met, because there is such a wisdom in this current, in this frequency of the unpolished Eros. And it's not about avoiding trauma bonds. It's not about avoiding the wounds. It's not about following into this trauma narrative that, I have trauma, which I'm not saying that people don't have trauma. I don't want to go down that road. I do extensive work around this. But what I'm speaking to is essentially stepping into learning how to navigate, becoming and refining our ability to navigate these wounds, to move, to traverse in the hell of what these wounds bring, to bring these wounds up and to go towards them when we see them, instead of shutting them down and running them away. And how to do that with embodiment, how to do that with mature conversation, how to do that with intense sexual energy really coursing through your veins. And that is what Unpolished is about. It's about this part of Eros, because at the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy, our mission is to integrate Eros into society. But we are missing a huge piece of Eros here. And this is the Eros that we are bringing forth in this cohort to meet and to learn how to meet with love. And this piece of Eros is what we are asking to really integrate as, like I said at the beginning of this video, we're looking at a larger entity of what it means to integrate sexuality into the world. We're looking at a larger entity of what it means to integrate sexuality as a level of consciousness, and what this means as a shift in humanity, and what this contributes to the shift in humanity for those beings who are able to be in right relationship with their sexuality, and then stepping in as leaders. And sexuality leaders at the Institute New Paradigm Intimacy doesn't necessarily mean leaders who specifically focus on sexuality, who are specific sex coaches. We include that, but sexuality leaders also mean lawyers, politicians, teachers who are in right relationship with their sexual energy, with their sexual current. That is the vision for the Institute New Paradigm Intimacy, is sexuality leaders who are embodied in their fullness of their Eros, the glamour side and the unglamorous side, the polished side and the unpolished side. And so by fine-tuning the frequency of these themes to embody this current in these cohorts, it supports the students, it supports the humanity, it supports us to get a greater glimpse of why we are here besides just serving our own purpose, and how we are actually contributing to the collective by honing in on these little specific pieces that I translate into themes, but are really larger pieces of our contribution to humanity and to the planet. So I will leave you with that. And we are open for accepting applications for our cohort 2026 Unpolished that begins January 2026. See you there.